Hello guys, this is Raj Pakhare and welcome to my channel. So in this video, we're gonna take a look at Spline Follow helper in Fume FX. So let's get started. So first of all, you can just create a Fume FX grid, and I'm just gonna create a spline and go into shapes and create a line. So something like this, a little bit spiral shape. And we can go and modify, select vertices, and adjust the Bezier handles. Something like this. This is just for example. Okay, so now how does that spline follow work in Fume FX? This has to be completely into NURBS, otherwise it won't work. So I'm going to convert this spline into NURBS. Okay, right down you can just go into NURBS curve and modify the shapes also. Then select the Fume FX grid, settings, and go into object source. So first of all, we'll need a simple source. It can be anything, particle source or anyone. So let's start with a simple source and turn on viewport preview and just play this. So right now this is just a basic simple source. I have disabled the fuel, and you can just turn off simulate fuel so we can only focus on smoke. Okay, so we need to place it somewhere over here. So I'm gonna go in front view, place it exactly there. Like this. And let's increase the timeline. Let's say 200. And change it in Fume FX to 200. And this much quality is okay for the preview purpose. And let's reduce all the parameters so it can simulate much more faster. And then we can bump these values later on. I'm just going to add a little bit vorticity and turbulence. Reduce the scale a bit. And detail too. Okay. Now we need to create a spline follow operator. So once I create this, you can see it's here. You can place it anywhere. So you can modify the parameters from this side as well as from here. I'm going to just select it over here and pick the spline. Click plus and click over here. So as soon as you add over here, you'll get these options. Now in these options, just turn on display always. So what it's going to show is this radius. Now this is influence radius. So influence radius is something which in this area the fume is going to affect, and it's going to follow the spline. So if you want to change the radius, we can change it from here or reduce it as we want. So this is the area of the effect. So I'm going to set this to back to 10. 10 looks good over here. And then these are the slice numbers. So if there's too much curve, you can just add these up. Right now we don't need that much. I'm going to just set this to 24, something like that. And then if you don't want, you can just turn this off. So first of all, let's have a preview. I'm going to play simulate. And now you can see our smoke is trying to follow this path, but it is not following exactly 100%. But this spline acts like a guide, a velocity guide. So it's going to direct the velocities in this direction. It's going to curl over here. And this is what the purpose of the spline follow is. It's gonna just guide it. So don't consider it as exactly a path constraint operator. It's gonna exactly follow over here. That won't look natural. So I think this looks cool, but if you want to modify, we can still have the parameters to do it. So let's simulate this for a while. As you can see, some part of the smoke is getting curled up over here and some part is getting exited from here. So this looks much more natural for me. Okay, let's stop this. So this is what we have. It's already looking pretty good. So let's modify this. Now what do we have over here? The first thing over here is we have already seen the influence radius. Now centripetal force. Now centripetal force is force which will guide the smoke or fire towards the spline. So more the force, the more it will push it to the spline. Less the amount, it will try to push it less. Okay. Now this force is very sensitive. If you try to increase it a lot, it will try to oscillate it. So be careful with this value. It will try to push the smoke towards the spline and it might start repeating it a lot, and so you'll have that oscillation of the smoke on the spline. So right now we can just keep it at this 1. The second value is rigidity. Rigidity means how much the smoke is gonna affect by turbulence or wind. If I increase the rigidity, it will have very minimum effect of the wind and the turbulence. But if reduced it, it will have more effect of turbulence and wind. So increasing it to 1 will be a little unnatural and it can look more rigid. So we already have a turbulence. If we add a wind also, that will have the minimum effect over here. As you can see, the smoke is looking very plain right now, as the turbulence is not affecting it much because the rigidity is 1. So if you want, we can just add a little bit value. So 0.1 stands for 10%, 1 stands for 100%. So I can just keep it 2.2. The second value is the blending rate. Now this is the amount how much the spline follow is going to affect your fumes. So if I set this to 100%, so 100% the smoke is going to follow the spline. But if I try to reduce it, let's say if I set it to 0, right now it's going to have a very, very, very little effect on the smoke. See? So if I try to add that value, 0.2 means 20%. So 20% is going to follow the smoke to the spline. So usually I always keep around like 0.8 or something like that. 0.7, 0.8 is a good value. So it won't follow the spline 100%. It will add a nice natural motion to it. Another value is maintain alignment. Now maintain alignment is the value which will rotate this part, the front end, when it's turning. So when the smoke turns, if you want that the front part also to turn as per the path, then you can increase this value. But this value makes your smoke looks little unnatural while turning. So usually I don't use this value, but in some cases if you do need, you can just use this value. So I'm just gonna set to 1 and play. So the front part will also rotate as per the path. See, this part is getting rotated. So it depends. For me, this value is not very important. So I'm gonna just set it 0. Then this option, stick to spline. You can use this option when you have to animate your spline. Suppose your spline is animating or there are points which are getting animated. So in that case, you can just tick mark this and then the animation will be also counted in spline follow. Then the most important parameters force. Along axis force, around axis force, and from axis force. Now what are these values? So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let's pump up the quality a bit. Something like this, so we can see. And turbulence is good for us. Okay. So what does along force do? Along axis force. Now this will push your fumes into the spline. Now how much force? Let's say right now it's 1. Now you can see it's not following exactly the path, but it's guiding the velocities through that path. So suppose if I want this fumes to be affected by the spline more, so I'm going to just double the value along axis force and play. And now you can see it's trying to follow the path much more than before. So more the value of this parameter, the strength, more it will try to follow the path and it will push the fumes through that path. And adding this value too much won't be also good. So let's say if I add it to 6, it will be just too much force for the smoke. So it depends on your scenario. As you can see, it's trying to completely follow it. And the force is too much, that's why it's going away from this part. So, and they have provided a animation flow curve. So if you want, you can just turn this on and you can modify the direction values, then radial values. So let's say if I can add points, and this will have 0 effect, and this will have the maximum effect, and 0, and so on. So you can animate that value along the path. As you can see, the force over here got reduced. Then again, it's going to follow more. Then again, so that's the benefit of the animation flow curves. Alright, let's turn that off. So I'm going to just right click and disable that. And similarly, you have the radial animation flow curve. So I'm going to turn that off too. So 2 value was good for us. So let's see how it was looking. Then the second value is around axis force. Now this is very cool. This will add rotation to your smoke. So now in this case, negative value stands for clockwise rotation and positive value stands for counterclockwise rotation. So if you want your fumes to rotate around the path like a spiral, so it will start rotating. So let's add value, let's say -5 or -3 and play this. As you can see, it's trying to spin around the path. Of course, if you add too much value, it can go crazy and lose its track. In that case, we can increase the centripetal force to push the fumes towards the spline. Now, we are not simulating this in the very high quality. That's why we can't see much details over here when it's spinning, but you can still see it's going clockwise like this. And positive values will make it spin in opposite direction, counterclockwise. Okay. Then the third value is from axis force. Now this will try to push the smoke away or towards the spline. Now in this case also, negative value will attract the smoke towards the spline and positive values will repel the smoke from the spline. So if I add a value, let's say -5, and if I play this, as you can see, it's trying to attract the smoke towards the spline. Now it's so powerful that the smoke is hardly emitting. So if I just say -1, as you can see, it's trying to attract it towards it itself, like a magnetic force or like powerful force. And you can see it's completely gone over here. So these values are very powerful. And if I just set it in positive, it will repel it. As you can see, it's trying to move away from the spline. And of course, our influence radius is this much, so you can see line over here, boundary over here. So if you want a good smoke, what we can do is just add a bit of centripetal force, very little rigidity. If you want a rotational, proper rotation, you can add a maintain alignment and blending rate, little bit of spin around the axis, and strength. These values are good enough to get a nice guide for your fumes. And if you want some disturbance in this, then you can add a turbulence, increase the turbulence value. So let it simulate. Okay, let's preview this part. So I'm gonna set this tools, preview, create till 112. Set this to standard, turn off the background and create. And I forgot to change the size. 640 by 40 is good for preview. So this is really cool fact. We can use this to do some magical effects. Maybe the smoke is getting attracted towards the character or spinning around the logo, something like that. As you can see, the spin is too much. We can just try to reduce that value. And let's add lights and just create standard lights. Just and I'm gonna just turn on the shadows, shadow parameters, atmospheric shadows, and maybe add a little bit blue tint. Similarly for shadows on, shadow parameters, atmospheric shadows on, and a little bit warm tint. And add these in illumination. Then go into rendering settings, scroll down, smoke, cast shadows, receive shadows on. And if you want to pump up the smoke, you can just boost the opacity. Okay, so what I'll do is modify the parameters a bit. First of all, let's increase the grid size. And reduce the spin. So -3, I'll keep it -1. And this can be around like 1.6 or something like that. And increase the quality, so reduce the spacing. So now it depends how much RAM you have. Right now I have 32 GB, so I can go around like below 32 GB, something like that. Never try to match your RAM with this. Otherwise, there won't be enough RAM for your PC to even run the software. So always keep a buffer. So if you have a 32 GB RAM, I can maximum increase the simulation to 26 GB or something like that. But this quality is too much, way too much. For a preview, I'm gonna just set this to something around 1 GB. And Control C for the camera. Set this to It's the TV, Shift F, framing, and save the file, the most important thing. And I'm gonna simulate this. Turn on the GPU preview, and reduce the smoke opacity. As you can see, there's a problem. What is happening is this smoke is trying to escape, and as soon as it goes over here, it's getting influenced by this path. So what we can do is maybe just modify the path a bit. A little path. Something like this. Now, if you're using Fume FX Spline Follow operator, then you shouldn't be adding very sharp turns, otherwise the fumes doesn't behave properly. So it should have that smooth rotation. Don't add very sharp turns. And I'm gonna increase the influence radius a bit. Okay, and turn this off. Simulate. And I think I need to reduce the scale of the turbulence, maybe around 6 or something. I'm gonna make it a little faster. Detail to 3, then quality to 7. Boost this min maximum iterations to 150 or 200. Let's simulate. Meanwhile, you can just try to change the colors of the smoke. So let's say make it 2, opacity, add a gradient. And let's make this some magical smoke. A little bit blue tint, purple, and push these values close to the left side. There you go. Something like this. So I'll let it preview. I'll pause the video and we'll get back. Alright guys, the simulation is almost done. But as you can see, the smoke is too much going away from the spline. So I'm just gonna stop this. And let's have a preview till 140 frames. Set this grid preview and set this to 140. Alright, so here's the preview. So it's coming out pretty good, but just we need to guide these fumes more towards the spline. As you can see, they're escaping from here, this part. So let's modify the parameters. What I'm gonna do is turn on the display. Okay. So what we can do is we can even animate the radius of it. So let's say if I want the radius to be even more, and I want to animate the radius, so I don't want the radius to be this large in this portion. So you can just add a point over here, pull this down so you can see the smoke radius, the influence radius has reduced over this part, and at the end. This is one way to increase the influence radius in certain parts. And then second thing, what we can do is we can increase the blending rate. Then along force, along axis force to be 2, and I can add a little bit attraction to this. So how we can add the attraction of the force is minus zero point 0.1, and adding positive value is repel from the spline, and negative values will attract to the spline. So I'll just set this to 0.1, minus 0.1, and okay, so let's have a preview now. Just turn this off. Alright guys, the simulation is done, but I did modify a few parameters. Firstly, I reduced the size of the simple source, then reduced this turbulence. It was way too high, so I made 0.2, and rest everything was same. So this is what we have. So as you can see, it's nicely using the spline as a guide. So it comes in handy, especially the magical stuff. So I hope you liked the video, and maybe it was informative for you. I tried to find out tutorials on Spline Follow, but I couldn't. So that's why I thought I should make a tutorial for you guys. So subscribe to my channel, like, dislike if you whatever you think, and I'll see you in the next video.